And we are live on the channel, ladies and gentlemen, Mets fans, wherever you are watching. We have a trade between the Mets and the White Sox, and we are here to discuss this very move right here from our New York Mets to ensure a little bit of versatility in the outfield, especially up the middle. And we are getting into the latest right here. The news just broke a couple of minutes ago from Jeff Passan, and it is late, so I'm trying to be as quiet as humanly possible right now. But I think that this is a move that definitely excites me. And we've been speculating when this trade was going to go down between the Mets and the White Sox for the better part of the last two seasons, and it has finally happened. Before we fully get into it, if you are joining me right here on this late night live stream to break down this trade very briefly, make sure to smash those thumbs up buttons while you are here. If you are new to the channel, make sure to go ahead and hit those thumbs up buttons as well, and hit the live chat with your immediate reactions as I am giving mine. Here we go. The full trade summary from Underdog MLB. This has been broken by multiple reporters. Passan was first. Heyman's confirming it. Mark Feinsand is confirming it. The Mets are getting Luis Robert Jr. in exchange for Luisangel Acuña and another prospect that recently appeared in Single A last season, if I'm not mistaken, Truman Pauly. I didn't know who Truman Pauly was. Apparently, he is a pitcher, and that's all I know about, the type of player that Pauly is. But basically, as we discussed this a couple of months ago when the Robert Jr., rumors surrounding the Mets were first circulating, they liked Luisangel Acuna from the very start. And this is very important from the Mets roster perspective going into 2026, because especially with the addition of Bo Bichette, this is a very rich roster full of infielders. And there was going to have to be a move, or maybe even two moves, one that we don't know about as of yet, to offload some of the infield talent in exchange for some outfield help and hopefully soon some pitching help. And this is the beginning of that movement under David Stearns. And we'll get into the contract details here. I don't believe, and as I am checking social media as I am talking right now, I don't believe we have any contract details that are coming out about if the White Sox are taking on any of the money that is remaining on Robert Jr.'s deal. And I'll get into that here in the next slide. But I would have to assume, without any confirmation, just speculating here, that the Mets are going to be taking on the full salary, which is $20 million for Robert Jr., because I think the White Sox could have gotten a little bit more for him, but they settled here, and which is great news for the New York Mets, not having to give up even more in addition to Acuna. But I think that in exchange for that, and given that, the full salary is probably going to be taken on here on the payroll for the Mets in 2026. Let's make no mistake about this, and let's get this out of the way, because we've been talking about Cody Bellinger for quite some time on the channel. Barring anything unforeseen and catastrophic, this definitely takes the Mets out on the Cody Bellinger sweepstakes. 100%. Your outfield is pretty much set at this point with Juan Soto, Robert Jr. up the middle and center field, and you'll probably have a platoon, I would think, right, of Tyrone Taylor and Carson Bench in left field. It seems like they are heavily going to commit to that duo in left field. Robert Jr. can play left field for a little bit as well, but it is less and less likely. But the good thing about this move right here also means that Brett Baty is not playing left field. And now we have to turn our focus over to Brett Baty once again. Is he going to be on this roster? Is he going to be used for an upgrade to the pitching in a subsequent trade moving forward? Or is he going to be playing first base for the New York Mets? That is essentially what this trade of Robert Jr. is telling me right here. Let me get into the chat. Uh, and Citizen is saying this right here. Uh, Guess this means no Bellinger. You would be absolutely correct. There's no chance. This was probably a pivot move with the smoke that we've been hearing surrounding Cody Bellinger's name, right? And earlier today, I released a video about the latest updates surrounding Bellinger. We've been talking about the contract parameters of what it would take for the New York Mets to take him away from the Yankees and other teams that are interested. John Heyman just posted a couple of hours ago that the Mets, Yankees, and two other teams that were not being named were interested in the services of Cody Bellinger. And I really think that the Mets had an offer out there for Cody Bellinger. Boris and Bellinger said, hell no, we are not taking that. And the Mets quickly pivoted after that because we also heard a John Heyman report talking about Austin Hayes and how the Mets and a plethora of other teams, including the Cardinals, were interested in free agent Austin Hayes. And we all know that of the options remaining, yeah, maybe Harrison Bader could be in this conversation if they were to go out there and sign him. Although I think that would be a huge mistake. If you're talking strict upside here, with an outfielder to get left on the market, not named Cody Bellinger, Robert Jr. is definitely the guy that you want to take a chance on. And that's exactly what David Stearns and this front office also had in mind. So I would agree 1,000% this means no Cody Bellinger until further notice. I think that maybe at this juncture, Cody Bellinger is likely headed back to the Bronx because they are the only team that we know of that is willing to give him a long-term deal, even close to what he wants, especially with what we heard earlier that the Blue Jays are out and not interested in Bellinger. I'm sure the Phillies are going to be sneaking up, maybe the Dodgers, maybe a sleeper team like the Giants and a handful of other organizations, but this means absolutely no Bellinger. Um, I knew we were going to get some comments here just like this. OMG, Robert stinks. Did you see him play for the White Sox? Yikes. And I'll get into that here in just a second. This move is about projectability and it's about a change of scenery. Make no mistake about that, even given the numbers that he has posted both in 2024 and 2025, coming off of, I agree with you, very lousy seasons, but that 2023 season still has apparently the Mets and a lot of other teams that were interested in Robert Jr. and this trade before he went to the Mets here just recently, that projectability excites front offices even still. And let's be honest, and I'm not going to make this excuse, and I'm not saying that this is 100% accurate, but when you're playing for an organization with a guy of this, talent level, a guy of this caliber, strapping up the laces and putting on the cleats every single day in that White Sox uniform for 162 has to be exhausting. And I say 162 because he also has a lot of injury, history, and I do understand that as well. So it's a little bit ironic, but he is not going to be an everyday player on the New York Mets. I highly doubt that. This is a depth move with the upside of him being a starter. Now, if I had to guess right now on January 20th, is Robert Jr. going to be in the starting lineup come opening day? I think that this allows the Mets to take their time with Carson Bench. This is a trade that is meant to be Carson Bench insurance. When we talk about putting these rookies in the best possible situation, you do not want to do what the front office did to the likes of Nolan McLean, Jonah Tong, and Brandon Sproat down the stretch of the season last season, where guys were not performing, the veterans were not performing, and you thrust the rookies into such a tough situation. Go out there and perform for us on the biggest stage. Oh, by the way, this is your debut. That's not what they want to do to Carson Bench. They want to slowly phase him into this roster in 2026. Whether they deem him ready or not, spring training is going to tell us everything about that decision. But having a competent outfield, a defensive-minded outfield, particularly with Robert Jr.'s upside defensively, Tyrone Taylor, and of course Juan Soto there would be the outlier. That is a plentiful head start until Carson Bench is completely ready in the eyes of this front office. So that's how I see this shaking out. Would I have preferred the Mets hold out and try to sweeten the pot a little bit to get Cody Bellinger? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Like, that is no question. For those of y'all who are a regular listeners on my channel, I want Cody Bellinger, and I've wanted Cody Bellinger because that would make a fantastic top 5, top 6 lineup in baseball. But like I said, with the contract situations, the Mets are still holding true, and this Robert Jr. trade is no different. This is an offseason where there are no commitments to players past 2 to 3 years. And Robert Jr. has 2 years left on his deal. Same thing goes for a guy that they just signed in Bo Bichette. From the pitching standpoint, Luke Weaver, Devin Williams, Jorge Polanco, on and on and on. We are seeing the 2 to 3 year time frame, and the Mets do not want to commit money beyond that. And that's probably what Cody Bellinger is asking for, a fourth, fifth, or maybe even sixth year. And the Mets probably got wind that they couldn't compete with the Yankees offer because Boris and Bellinger are still looking for those years. That's my honest assumption, and that's my honest guess. Let me check here for any further details before we fully assess this even further. I'm not going to be on here for too long. Yeah, the thing about this as well is that Robert Jr. with the bat, he is a right-handed bat, but he knows how to hit left-handed pitching, and that's something that the Mets clearly do value, is the ability for a guy who's not a switch hitter to still be able to hit righties and lefties. That is a flexible player that Carlos Mendoza can work with when he's making his lineups every day. And this is, we finally have the details right here per John Heyman. The Mets will pay $22 million guaranteed left. $20 million in 2026, so the full total of his contract for the 2026 season, plus a $2 million buyout on $20 million in 2027 that has an option. So let's take a look at that right here, actually, with this next slide. And you see that right here. 2026, $20 million is what Robert Jr.'s owed. There's a club option, which means the utmost flexibility for David Stearns and this front office. They get to decide based off of the type of season that he has. Is he going to have a resurgence season? Is he going to have another lousy season that replicates 2024 and his 2025 numbers? Well, then they're only paying the $2 million buyout plus the $20 million for 2026, and he will be on the free agent market starting next off season. But if he does well, and we talk about the projectability, if he gets back into anything close of that 2023 version of himself, you get a pretty damn good ball player for relatively cheap in $20 million. Cheap for a big market team's definition, right? And the Mets can exercise that club option. So really, the only true commitment here, the only guaranteed commitment on this contract for the Mets is that first year. And then they have the club option to decide on after the season. Let's see here. Let's get into some more comments. Listen, you know what? You can disagree with that, and Bellinger can still be in play. Maybe the Mets are serious about Bellinger playing left field. Maybe they do want to make Carson Bench and Tyrone Taylor bench players, or maybe they want to start off Carson Bench in the minor leagues, and they're just going to go full throttle for Bellinger. That is fine, and I can see that happening because as long as we have Steve Cohen as the owner, he's going to be willing to spend money. I just personally think myself, the way that, the competition looks like for Bellinger right now, I think this move is an indication that they have pivoted off of those contract talks. Could I be wrong? Absolutely. Could Bellinger come here and play first base and Brett Baty be on his first way out to Boston or wherever else, Milwaukee or whatever organization the Mets want to trade with next? Yes, that's also plausible as well. I just don't see that as likely at this point. I don't. John is saying you this was in play. It was a low risk, high reward move. I think Bellinger's still in play. So the consensus that I'm getting in this chat from you all is that you all still think that Bellinger is in play. And I hope you all are right. I really do hope you all are right. I really want to see Bellinger in a Mets uniform. I think that lineup would be absolutely fantastic. But like I said, I wish nothing but the best. I think we have to talk about this very briefly. I wish nothing but the best to Luisangel Acuña. It was very clear that he was going to be a bench player for this team. He was not going to be a starter. He got the opportunity at the tail end of 2024 when Lindor went down. He killed it. He crushed it, and he had Mets fans excited about him potentially being an everyday second baseman for the Mets. And he got that opportunity one way or another last season, and he absolutely faltered. Coupled with the fact that he's absolutely killing it in Winter League right now, that also probably enticed the White Sox to take a chance on him. So I wish him nothing but the best in, a White Sox uniform. I think that situation, honestly, is the best thing for his career and for his development. So we will definitely be keeping tabs on Acuna and what he does moving forward with the White Sox. But this was a necessary move because, like I mentioned, with the prospects that are coming up, with the MLB talent already, with Vientos, right? Baty, you just got Bichette, you just got Polanco. Guys are coming up through the system. Jacob Reimer is knocking on the door. You needed to part ways with Mauricio. How can I forget about Mauricio? You needed to part ways with at least one of these infielders. And honestly, the Mets shouldn't stop there because I think they have allowed themselves with this infield depth to go ahead and trade another infield, talent. I don't know if it's Baty, Vientos, Mauricio. All three of those guys are in play, in my humble opinion, given what I just stated. Let's see here. Let's get into some more comments. Yep, there it is. Hopefully that answers your question. What's on the screen, JB? It is a 1-year deal with the club option. So really, the Mets are only guaranteed $22 million to take on of this salary. It could go up to $42 million if they exercise the club option. He has to perform a whole lot better than he did in 2024 and 2025 for them to do that. Let's take a look at the defense here. I'm looking at FanGraphs. For those of you all who are wondering, I will actually toss this link in the chat and you can go to advanced fielding to see what Robert Jr. has done. I keep on saying Robert Jr., Robert Jr. Please bear with me. It is late. I was just ready to go to sleep and I got the notification, so I wanted to come on here and break this down. My mind is all over the place at this point because I totally did not. I expected this move. I thought that this was realistic, but I just didn't expect it to happen so quickly with that Jeff Passan bomb that he dropped. But I'm taking a look at the, statistics here, especially up the middle in center field for Robert Jr. Defensive runs saved. I mean, we know he has all the range in the world. By the way, this guy's speed going into this lineup, if he can get on base even at a semi-consistent clip and steal, 30 plus bags for this team like he knows how to do, that is also a different variation of even more of a dangerous lineup that Carlos Mendoza can put out there, to resemble that speed on the bases. And we'll take a look at some of the stolen base metrics that he's posted over the years. But the defensive runs saved, if we're taking a look at DRS, have gone down since 2023. It's gone 7, 1, and then 0 last season, respectively. But when you assess the range and his ability to still cover ground, in 2023, he posted 12 in the outs above average, plus 12. He was only at plus 1 in center field in the OAA category in 2024, and it shot back up to plus 7 in 2025. So still a lot of range. The arm is what it is. It's average, but defensively, this still plays into, by definition, what David Stearns wanted to do in aligning his defense. And it doesn't shock me because you are on the cusp of having two players in your corner infield spots play brand new positions that they've never played in their lifetime before at the major league level. It makes all the sense in the world to shore up your defense up the middle at the very least with a guy like either Tyrone Taylor or Robert Jr., and also Lindor and Simeon, who are going to be your double play combo up the middle. The injuries are definitely concerned with Robert Jr. I wanted to make sure that I bring that up here because you take a look at the games played over the past couple of seasons, 145 in 2023, 100 even in 2024, 110 in 2025. And let's just take a look at Robert Jr. injuries because I'm not sure what type of injuries he's actually had. Let's see. So I see a hamstring / leg injury in 2023 and 2022, a hip injury in 2021, as well as another hip injury in 2023, a groin injury in 22, 23, and 24, wrist and hand injury in 2022, and then some other, illnesses and ailments there too. So a pretty long rap sheet of injuries for Robert Jr. And that's why, you can have him starting out the season as a semi-regular, player and then slowly dwindle the playing time down, load management, so to speak, and have Carson Bench come up and do what he does his rookie season. That's how I see it playing out from the New York Mets perspective. So I like this trade because, again, we know what he posted in 2023. That type of player is always going to excite me. You all don't necessarily have to agree with that because he has more or less stunk over the last 2 seasons, but this is a move where I will reiterate one more time. I do not think he's going to be playing on an everyday basis. This is a better version, more or less, of the trade that they made for Jose Siri last offseason, where Siri was never meant to come here and be an everyday player. And he is also not even half the ball player that Robert Jr. is, but more or less the same philosophy and ideology from this Mets front office in trying to configure this outfield the way they want it to. To answer this question, Ricardo, I really do think to start the season, it all depends on how Carson Bench does in spring training. If he has a lights out spring training, he's going to be your opening day left fielder. If he doesn't, maybe he makes the roster, maybe he doesn't. I don't think he's going to make the roster to be on the bench, so you might see him even start off in AAA for the time being with Tyrone Taylor taking those duties in left field. But make no mistake about it, one injury, a couple of months of lack of performance from Tyrone Taylor with the bat or Robert Jr. with the bat, and Carson Bench is on his way up to Queens. Make no mistake about that. I think that they are going to have a very, they're going to be very trigger happy with a Bench move if he starts the season off in the minor leagues. That's what I think. I'm shocked here. Here we go. Here's one person that says this is a W trade from Anthony. I appreciate you tuning in. I appreciate all of you all tuning in. Die hard Mets fans here on this late night, breaking this trade down between the Mets and the White Sox. If you missed it, if you are just tuning in, this is the deal of Robert Jr., who is officially on his way to Queens to be an outfielder for this Mets team. In what capacity, we do not know. All we know is that the Mets are taking on the full contract, $20 million, with a $2 million buyout bonus that he would get should he get cut, or I even think if they don't, exercise that club option, he still gets the $2 million, if I'm not mistaken, in exchange for Robert Jr. The Mets are sending Luisangel Acuña and Truman Pauly over to the south side of Chicago. So let me just check some more comments. Exactly. I agree, John. But a lot of people are, look at the overall numbers of what he posted, and we also have to talk about this because I'm not going to end this stream without talking about this aspect too. We saw a different player in Luis Robert Jr. in the second half after the All-Star break last season. That is a really good way to end his 2025 campaign and hopefully carry that momentum over with the change of scenery in Queens with the Mets. let's take a look at these splits. But a lot of people see what he posted in 2024, and 2025 with the overall numbers without digging deeper into it. And a lot of people just don't understand or even care to understand or acknowledge projectability. And that is what I'm here to relay to you all. Whether you want to hear it or not, that's the bottom line. And the Mets don't make this trade if they don't project Robert Jr. to take a step up of what he's posted the last 2 seasons. First half versus second half, 79 games played in the first half versus 31 games played in the second half in 2025. Batting average all across the board. I wish I could, I'm sure there's a way I can share my screen on this thing, but I'm not going to do it because I just don't know how to do it right now on the fly. So I'm going to drop the link here instead. This is the next best option for you all to follow along. This is the split page of Robert Jr. in a White Sox uniform. If you click on that link, it is now in the chat. Make sure to go ahead and do so if you want to follow along. First half versus second half, he hit 190 in the first half versus 298 in the second half. 298 in 31 games. OPS was 599 in the first half versus an 808 OPS. That 800 mark, that is the barometer. Anything north of that is a pretty respectable frame of games that you are playing, and that is what he posted. 808 in 31 games in the second half. His OBP went from 275 to 352, and his slugging went from 325 to 456. He figured something out. Whether he was more disciplined, whether he was just handling the pitches that he was supposed to handle, I don't know what happened because I don't watch White Sox baseball on a regular like that. But something clicked in his mind at the plate in order for him to have that monstrous of a second half. Maybe he even took disrespect to the continued trade talks that he was being involved in. I don't know. But he was a lot better in the second half. That is for certain. Strikeout percentage also for him went down in 2025 overall from 33.2% in 2024 to 26% overall in 2025. That is a good sign. And his walk rate, when I talk about what could have went right for Robert Jr. in the second half, his walk rate went up by a healthy margin, 6.6% in 2024 to 9.3% in 2025. You hope he is able to carry out and carry over that selectiveness and that pitch recognition in orange and blue. That's what we are all hoping for here, essentially. Make sure I'm not missing any more news here regarding this. Appreciate you all joining me again. Make sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel. Usually try to do these streams and break the news down as soon as it happens. Sometimes I'm late. This time I wasn't. Before I shut my eyes to go to bed, I had to just check Twitter one more time and boom, got the notification, which is setting me up for this stream right here. So I appreciate you all being here with me on this late night. A lot of people saying Bellinger still in play for the Mets. We'll see if it happens. I'm not so convinced. Bellinger's starting point, is 7 years. That's absolutely ridiculous. And the Yankees, I think he's foolish as of right now. Him and Boris are foolish to not take that 5-year deal, worth 160 with the Yankees. But what do I know? I don't know if he's holding out for something more. I just can't see him if he's turning down 5 years with the Yankees. I can't see him beating that offer from anybody. So that would mean he'd probably have to pivot to a shorter term deal, which I thought the Mets could have definitely been in play for. Maybe they still are. Who knows? I think he's going back to the Bronx. I think he's going to realize and just take the 2 opt-outs that they are offering him. That's what I think. Good point here by John. This guy is going to be supported by our lineup. We lose nothing and may cash a lightning in the bottle situation. People are too locked into their perceptions and not reality, but that is their right. Yeah, you're spot on. I agree with you. Not everybody's going to agree, and that's okay. Differences in opinion, especially surrounding the New York Mets, happen all the time. Not everybody that listens to my channel agrees with me. I appreciate everybody's perspective, but in this case, I do agree with you, John. I think that with a change of scenery overall, with the I guess, not with him not needing to play every day, because I just said I think he's going to be sooner or later a platoon player, depending on what happens with Benj for the New York Mets in 2026. And with the other names in this lineup that you already have, especially at the top, listen, we have been searching for the right cleanup hitter. We've been talking about this Mets lineup, especially with the addition of Bo Bichette. I'm not saying that Robert Jr. is going to be the cleanup hitter, but he projects really well to be one, if not the 5 hitter. So you're probably talking about a situation. I think at this point, to begin the season, if this offense stands as is, you're looking at him being your 5 hitter. You're talking about a top 5 of Lindor, Soto, Bichette. Polanco is going to be your cleanup hitter, and that's where I kind of have some issues because, I know he's coming off of a career high in home runs at like 26, but he's not really a prototypical cleanup hitter. But then again, who is nowadays, in baseball around the MLB? Not many guys. And you'll probably have Robert Jr. as your 5 hitter. Depending on what happens with Mark Vientos, depending on what happens with Brett Baty, one of those guys is probably your 6 hitter. Alvarez is going to slot in as your number 7 hitter, so on and so forth. That is a very early projection and prediction of what I think happens with this Mets lineup moving forward, given the additions of Bichette and Robert Jr. Now, Citizens is talking about getting a starting pitcher. I've been talking about Freddie Peralta. There's a handful of other starting pitchers that are going to be available via trade. I think that the conversation has to start with Freddie Peralta. I really do. And I think that the Brewers and the Mets, whether people want to acknowledge it or not, are really good trade partners for what the Brewers need to make their lineup better and more consistent for them to not choke in the playoffs yet again. They had a great regular season, but that lineup needs work if they really want to make some noise alongside the Dodgers in the National League. And for the Mets to make some noise, like Citizen is saying, they need some pitching. And I really do think that, especially with the emergence of Abner Uribe over there, I said it in my latest video a couple of days ago. I think I posted yesterday or the day before. If you missed it, go check it out. I really do think that they would also be willing to part ways with a guy like Trevor McGill in that deal. So I think you might be talking about Chris Bubich, the lefty. If I'm not mistaken, John, I like him a lot. He's coming off of a really good season, but how is he going to project out for the foreseeable future? It's anybody's guess. I do believe he's coming off of Tommy John surgery that forced him to miss a lot of the 2023 and 2024 season. I think he posted like a 2.9 ERA, something like that in 2025 with the Royals. But with those numbers, can you call him, a potential number 1 or number 2? Sure, just like Freddie Peralta, but I'm a little bit less convinced. I'd have to see another season. I take a chance on him at this point. I think I'd take a chance on anybody given the state of this rotation. But like I mentioned, I think Freddie Peralta is still the guy that you have to start with, especially if you're going to build the most the best rotation that you can be the most confident in with the least amount of question marks. Because Bubich, great pitcher, great talent. The injury set him back a little bit, but still objectively, second year off of Tommy John, a little bit of a question mark. And I don't even know. I wish I could answer that question from you. I don't even know what it would take to get Bubich. I don't know what the Royals want. I don't know what they need. That'll be something that maybe I'll make a video on once I do a little bit more research. I don't want to just say something random on here just to, for the sake of answering a question. So, good question and another topic idea for one of my future videos. So thank you. But that's really it. That's all I had. This is really all I had on this trade. Again, I understand that this is a little bit frustrating, especially if this does. I'm not saying that it completely does factually until we hear from a reporter like Will Salmon that they're out on Bellinger. But I think more or less it's safe to say that they are out on Cody Bellinger. Please shock us all and go out there and still get Cody Bellinger. Would love that. Would absolutely love it. I just don't foresee it. So, let's talk about this real quick, actually. Here is a version from the SNY page over on Twitter about how they are projecting this lineup to play out with the current personnel. A little bit different than mine. They have Lindor, Soto, Bichette, Polanco as your top four, but they have Baty as the DH. I don't know about that one. I don't know about that one. SNY has been coming out with some pretty unique lineups here. If in this scenario, if Baty's DHing, Vientos is in a trade somewhere. Vientos, and this was what I will also say. I know I said I was going to end this stream. I got to talk about this. You are basically going to be forced to, if you want starting pitching via trade, you're going to have to make a decision on Brett Baty and Mark Vientos. Clearly, a lot of people would prefer to trade Mark Vientos over Baty. I'm one of those people. I get it, and I understand the reasons why. Teams are going to want Brett Baty more objectively, especially the season that he's coming off of. I don't think any of these guys, either of those guys, are going to be bench players for the Mets. There's no chance. That would be very counterproductive for what the Mets need in 2026, and it would be a wasted opportunity to use their value, not including them in a trade for pitching. So Vientos or Baty, make a decision. One of them at this point will be your DH. If you don't want Jorge Polanco to play first base, you might as well keep Brett Baty around because they're talking about him playing first base as well. That could be a little bit of a platoon, if they deem that necessary from the mind of David Stearns and the whole defensive philosophy. But going back to this lineup, Lindor, Soto, Bichette, Polanco, top four. They have Baty DHing at number 5. They have Alvarez catching at number 6. They have Luis Robert Jr. playing center field at number 7. Simeon playing 2B. As we all know, he was traded here to be a second baseman. That allowed them to trade Jeff McNeil. He's going to be batting 8. And they have Carson Bench as the opening day left fielder, batting 9th, playing left field. This lineup, I know it's missing the household names of Pete Alonso and it's missing Brandon Nimmo and McNeil. I get it. I like the way this lineup looks. I really like the way this lineup looks. I think I would move some things around here, but I think Marcus Simeon's going to have a whole lot better of a time at the dish than he did in 2025. I still think he has a lot left to give with his bat. We know what we're getting defensively. If you're telling me that Robert Jr. is going to be better, I don't care how much better than he was in 2025, in 2026, I'm on board with that. Alvarez, bounce back season, and Brett Baty continuing what he did in 2025. Again, bottom half of this lineup that's projected, still a lot of question marks, but if everything goes right, this is a very dangerous lineup. Very dangerous lineup. And I'm happy. I didn't really see what the vision was at one point. I don't think anybody did after Brandon Nimmo got traded, after Pete Alonso walked to the Orioles on the 5-year deal. But now we're slowly starting to see what that vision is. And quite frankly, the vision is also not committing to a lineup for more than 2 to 3 years. I mean, I hate to say it, but outside of a few guys like Soto, like Lindor, like Baty, if he sticks around, and some more of these guys, they're not committing to this lineup long term. Bichette has the ability to opt out. Polanco's only a 2-year deal. Robert Jr. is only guaranteed one year before the Mets have to exercise his club option or decline it. And so a lot of these guys are not going to be here for the foreseeable future. And we'll be having these same conversations. But at least for the 2026 season, heading into a potential lockout, I like the projectability and I like the overall plan of what I'm seeing. Could it still use one more bat? Yes, absolutely. 100%. Is Bellinger in play? Maybe. We don't know. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now with this team. So I appreciate you all being here. Like I said, late night stream. I'm getting a little bit tired. So I'm going to call it here and enjoy the rest of the night or the rest of the day, as it is now basically past noon here, East Coast time. I appreciate you all being here. Like I said, Mets fans, whether you're listening over on YouTube or over on X, make sure to hit the repost button if you're on X for me. If you enjoy these conversations, if you enjoy the breakdowns of, these trades and this trade in particular that we're talking about. If you're over on YouTube and if you're new to the channel, whether you're a Mets fan or not, just talking baseball in general, smash the thumbs up buttons, hit the subscribe button, all that fun stuff. And I definitely appreciate you all. And yeah, Robert Jr., you're looking at your newest New York Met. Luis Robert Jr. is on his way to Queens in 2026. Peace.